office that he couldn't postpone or reschedule. But thank you for coming this morning, and I want to thank Tammy Wank and Jamie Smith, as always, for leading the way in VSSA educational programs, and also Martha Tessmer and Officer Tang for joining us. And both Martha and Officer Tang have been here a number of times talking to our students. They're favorites. The students actually listen to them. It's so common when we as parents are telling our kids about driving, they shut off. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I know what you're doing. But they will listen to other people. And we do take our responsibility here very seriously. I was just mentioning to these folks a moment ago that two brief stories. Sometimes a local neighbor will give me a call really furious and say, there was one of your students in this particular car who was driving recklessly. I saw it. If he doesn't drive better, I'm going to report him to the police. And I said, please report him to the police. Don't threaten me with that. Do it. I mean, if we have students driving recklessly, we want them to get it right. The second thing that we'll do is if I get a report that a student's driving poorly off campus or on, we'll talk to the student but also contact the parent. You as parents will want to know if your children are driving recklessly. I certainly would too. I have had both my daughters reach the magic age of driving, and I know it's one of the more terrifying things you'll ever have in your life. And it turns out okay. And we will do our best to work along with you to make sure they drive properly and safely as much as possible. But it's not an easy process, and it's one in which we need all the help and guidance and assistance that we possibly can. So to that end, I'm going to bring up Tammy Wank and Jamie Smith, who will have a few words and open the program. And also, again, my thanks to everyone here today. Thank you for coming. What you learned today, please spread the word. And we will do our best here to make sure your children do the best possible job with driving. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kukowski, for your commitment. Good morning. Jamie and I both know you have so many other places you could be this morning, and we want to thank you for making the choice to be here. As we close out our parent education series this year, with our speakers today, we thank you in advance for your effort and continued support. As I am big on quotes, today is no different, but today's is one I am sure all of us are familiar with. Do as I say, not as I do. Does it really matter the origin? Because as we all nod our heads, that at one time or another, we have said it over and over to our child in hopes that they do just that. Do as I say, not as I do. Today's presentation, Adults as Role Models, reminds us and teaches us that our actions speak so much louder than our words. It is of no coincidence that our speakers today are scheduled during this month. You see, April is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month, introduced as a resolution and passed by the House of Representatives in 2010. The resolution mentions 9-year-old Erica Fournet, who was struck and killed by a distracted driver in Fort Collins, Colorado in 2008. Transitioning on to this morning's speakers. It is with my great pleasure to introduce Martha Tessmer from Impact Teen Drivers. In 2009, Martha partnered with Impact Teen Drivers, dedicating her life to spread the message about the very real dangers of reckless and distracted driving. Martha is a speaker, teen-safe driving advocate, and mother, and together with Officer Tang today, will be engaging us in a moving and impactful presentation. Her first-hand experience has made her an invaluable asset to the Impact program. Since 2007, Impact Teen Drivers has been working to share with teens the dangers of reckless and distracted driving through effective campaigns online and in schools. Their message is simple, yet vital. Focus on the road ahead and get to where you are going safely. They have reached over 2 million high school students all across America. This past October, Martha met and presented to Viewpoint's high school junior class. And now, with our parent community, she shares her story and her campaign with all of us.
The other half of this dynamic duo is Officer Leland Tang of the California Highway Patrol. Since 1994, Officer Tang has held many positions within the department, including patrol officer at the Reagan State Building and Special Task Force officer assigned to commercial vehicle road enforcement. In 2001, Officer Tang was asked to be the Public Affairs and Information Officer for the West Valley. In 2007, he became the Media Liaison Officer for the Southern Division of Los Angeles County and is currently the Public Information Officer for the West Valley area. In addition to his CHP duties and volunteer work, Officer Tang is an adjunct professor at Pierce College, which I'm sure you all are aware of in the area, teaching criminal justice. Along with this morning's speakers, Carlos Sanchez, the head of Viewpoint Campus Security, is here to answer questions regarding parking lot safety. And for your convenience, as well as the convenience of those who were not able to attend today, this speaking engagement will be videotaped and available on Viewpoint's password-protected website. I would like to take just a quick moment to thank Tammy Wank for her dedicated, this is a surprise to her, for her dedicated service in the past 2 years as co-chair of the Parent Education Speaker Series. She's been instrumental in bringing so many amazing speakers to our school, giving us the opportunity to learn and grow as parents and as individuals. Thank you, Tammy, for your service, your mentorship, and your friendship. So finally, we are so very pleased to introduce Martha Tessmer, Officer Leland Tang, and Carlos Sanchez. We're thrilled that they're able to join us this morning and share their combined wealth of knowledge on the subject of distracted driving and to discuss how we as parents can positively influence the driving habits of our children now and in the future by being good role models. So please give them a warm welcome.
Okay, well, thanks. Leland and I were wanderers, so I'm wandering away from the podium. That's the first wandering I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of get over here. And before you know it, we might be wandering right up next to you. So that's just kind of how we like it. Thank you for the welcome. And, you know, I love being able to come back and talk to the parents. Some of you may have had juniors who Leland and I spoke to in October of last year, and that was, you know, a real treat as well. But today, we're going to talk about this topic, distracted and reckless driving. And, you know, first off, to relinquish any fears, the fact that you have two educators presenting to you, trust me, you know, we're not going to lecture. What we would prefer is to talk with you. So if you have questions as we go, you know, please let us know. And then we will have time afterwards for questions, and we'll stay behind when the set ending time, you know, is scheduled to answer any additional questions that we may not cover here in our presentation. So again, we're here to talk with you today, even though we're educators by trade, not to talk at you. So just hopefully that doesn't bring back terrible nightmares of your education experiences in the past, because I had some that were like that. So, all right, so what are we wanting you to understand? Well, first off, when we ask teens a very simple question, and here was a very simple question: what do you consider lethal? These were some of the answers they gave us. Were those the top 4 answers? Would those have been some of the answers that you would have thought your teen might have given? Because when we ask teens, what do you think is lethal as a teen? And even when we talk to middle school students, you know, when we talk to middle school students, we'll ask them that same question. Hey guys, what do you think is lethal? And then some of the middle school students, their answers are about the same as some of the teens. But what we want all of them to know is that, yeah, swords, grizzlies, and crack and AIDS, yep, that would be lethal and take a human life. But lip gloss, when it's related to driving, is actually more lethal. And it's not the object. You see, whether it's middle school or high school students, we want them to understand, it's not the object that becomes lethal when you're driving. It's where you choose to use that object. So lip gloss. Our point there is just to get the attention of young people, but really what we're telling them is if a driver is choosing to make sure they look good while they're driving, then they're not looking at the road, they're looking in the visor, they're looking at the mirror, they're not looking at the road ahead of them. So it's actually anything. Lip gloss would just be one of many items that if they take their eyes off the road, then they, as a driver, become lethal in that moment while they're driving. So some of the other crazy answers that you see, again, the top 4 on each of the posters is what other teens or middle school students might have said that was lethal, would take a human life, and those are all correct answers: piranhas, Ebola, shotguns, and poison. The latte? Okay, now I know I'm getting a little on the sensitive side here, you know, for those of us that love Starbucks, but again, what officers like Officer Tang and our program want to emphasize is it's not the actual latte any more than it would have been the lip gloss. It's not the object. It's actually, anything. It could be a bottle of water, cup of hot chocolate. Doesn't make a difference. It could be messing with a stereo. It's anything where a driver, instead of holding the wheel so they can control their vehicle, whether it's an unexpected situation or an expected situation that happens in front of that car, it's not having that second hand able to control the wheel. And then this next one, texting is not a designer topic. You get the idea of how the posters work, but texting, you see, we want to make sure that no matter what age group we're talking to, that everyone understands this isn't a designer topic, it's a deadly topic. In fact, there's been enough research done now that proves that texting while someone is driving causes that driver to be equally as dangerous as if they were driving legally drunk. So when we go and talk to middle school students, obviously they're passengers in the cars. But even when we talk to high school students, whether they have their driver's license already or not, like I tell the teens, even if you have a driver's license, you will still be a passenger. So what we want passengers to understand is if a driver is texting while they drive, and if they sit there in that passenger seat and allow that to continue, that their life as a passenger is in as much danger as if they had gotten in a car with a drunk. And we encourage them, and are hoping that they would never get in a car knowing somebody had been drinking, and then allow that person, a drunk driver, to drive them around as a passenger. We empower the young people. You speak up, and you tell that person, "I'm not getting in that car with you if you've been drinking." But what we also want to empower them, now that they are being told that when the driver's texting is equally as dangerous, what we want them to be empowered is that car is already in motion, so the option of getting out of the car is over. But when that cell phone's being pulled out and they're texting while they drive, we want them as passengers to be empowered to speak up and say, "I'll take care of that cell phone for you," or "You need to put it away." We want them to be just as empowered to speak up and say, "You know what, you're not going to be texting and driving, not when I'm your passenger." See, we want them to know that there is a danger when people text and drive, and that they are empowered as a passenger to protect their life from that kind of a danger. So how dangerous is it? Well, on this, I'm not sure if we have a poster out here, but I'm going to bring this up. You can't see it quite as well. Officer Tang's going to pull out a poster because this is just a great one. We'll have him walk around, or if not, we'll have it at the table. But you see, visuals for statistics. It's sure a nice way to go, because the visual that you'll see behind me in the poster I'm referring to is a series of dots. And on that poster that's made up of a series of dots, every dot is a human life. It's a teenager's life. From ages 15 to 19 who died in a single year's time in the United States. And so as you see this poster come by, you can see clearer that the dots on our poster are colored dots. So the colors of the dots represent what they died from. So you see that those numbers show you how many teens died from murder, disease, suicide, and on the poster, the red dots are murder. The green dots are teens who died because their bodies wore out from disease. The yellow dots are teens who died because they chose to take their life through suicide. But our picture, as you see, it's made up of white dots. Well, those are teens who died from car crashes. So the message of this poster, the message of these numbers is car crashes, they are the #1 killer of teenagers in the United States. And you as parents, we're hoping that after today you'll know how dangerous this topic really is and how important it is to talk to your teens and your middle school students and even your little elementary school students the importance of being not only a good passenger, but a responsible driver in order to protect lives. Thank you, Officer Tang. So numbers, the thing about numbers is sometimes we forget that numbers are created, stats are created because there's people behind those numbers. So that means all those numbers that you just seen and all these numbers that you're seeing now, these are not just numbers, these are people. They have faces, they have families. They too have parents that cared about them. So when you look at these are numbers, when you think of them as being people, that should bring all of us a lot of alarm. Because you see, every year we lose thousands of teenagers to car crashes in the United States. About 500 just in the state of California alone. And we don't want to think about our teen being the one who's lost in a car crash. But the number that you see there, the second bullet down, 400,000 are injured. I don't know, do you want your teen to be amongst that number? Because you see, those injuries, those are teens who were in a car crash, who did not die, but they were injured. And that injury could go from a broken thumb to a comatose vegetative state. Have you ever thought, being the adult of a young person, what it would be like to sit next to your child's bed as they were in a coma because they had been in a car crash and they made it? You see, sometimes making it through a car crash doesn't mean that the journey is still smooth sailing. You see, 400,000 teenagers, they're injured every year in a car crash. And then of those that we're talking about who have lost their life, the last bullet that you see there is, initially our thoughts might be, well, it's that drunk driving. And that is a serious issue. Officer Tang and I, we do not downplay the seriousness of drunk driving. Not at all. But of all those teens that die and are injured, 25% of those car crashes, those fatalities that are caused by car crashes, those are the ones that are caused by drugs or drinking. That means that 75% of the teens who are killed in a car crash, it has nothing to do with drugs or drinking. It has to do with the things I was just talking about. It has to do with distracted driving. Distracted driving, like we said, that could be something like, putting on your lipstick, combing your hair, looking in the mirror, adjusting your hat. It's anything in which you're not going to look at the road, but you're going to be more concerned about looking elsewhere. Or, as we tell teens, it's anything that they would choose to take their hand off the steering wheel instead of driving with those two hands on the wheel. So as parents, please remind them, even though you got your license, it doesn't mean that now you get to drive with one hand. You always keep both hands on the wheel because it prepares them to be able to navigate and maneuver that car if something unexpected happens. I live in the country with my family. When I come down here, man, just driving from point A to point B, there's unexpected. It's like, oh my gosh, where did all these cars come from? I need some space here. But, even though they're more accustomed to all the traffic, that may not be what they consider unexpected. But you guys know, you can never expect or anticipate what might happen next on the roads. So you see, that is distracted driving. So if you have heard of the topic but never really knew what to talk to your teens about regarding the topic, well, that's it. Anything that would take their eyes off the road, anything that would take their hands off the steering wheel, and anything that would take their brain off their driving to be more focused about something other than paying attention to what they're doing behind the wheel. So, Impact Teen Drivers, we're a research-based company. So we go out, check out, with focus groups, talk to people. And when we talked to parents, these were some of the results we got. The parents said, yeah, I know it's a serious issue. But then when we talked to them further, they never really understood the underlying cause of the issue. Again, their heads first went to drunk driving, not understanding the underlying cause are very common habits that might have worked fine when you were a passenger, but doesn't work fine when you're a driver. The other thing that parents had told us is, I talk to my teens about everything. And some of the things, you have listed here, they might, and you might have talked to your teens about that, but have you really talked to them about distracted driving? Have you really talked to them about the importance of being a good driver, especially now that you know that they're more likely to die in a car crash than they are from murder, disease, or suicide? This is what is most likely to take your child's life from you while they're a teenager. So then we talked to teens. And we talked to teens, we asked them, so who's your number one role model? And what they tell us is their parents, whoever that adult is in their life. For some of you, that might be surprising if you have a teen who doesn't even talk to you, to know that they may not be talking to you, but they're watching you. And they don't start watching us when they're 15 and a half, they start watching us when they're about 5 and a half. And so as drivers, we are their role models. And that's what teens are admitting to us. And they're saying that however they've seen their parents drive, that's how they think they can drive when it's their turn. And again, some of us as adults, we don't want to hear that. We don't want to think that way. Because that means that if we're texting while we drive, they are going to text and drive. If they have seen their parent, and I can't believe that, some of the things these officers share with me of what they've seen drivers doing on the road. If they have seen their parent with that cardboard takeout container in one hand, a fork in the other hand, and driving with their knees, they're going to think they can do that, and they will try. So however we have been driving as parents, as adults, your teen is going to try to drive like that. Because you see, you've given them an unspoken permission. And I really love, Tammy, that you started with that phrase, because that's what I always want parents to think about. It doesn't work for us to say, do as I say, not as I do. Good luck for trying that one, because what the teens are telling us when we talk to them is they're going to do as you do. So it's a great phrase. My parents tried to use it on me, but take it from research. It's not working like that when it comes to the role modeling for your teen drivers. So we have a video that we're going to show right now, and it's going to reiterate everything that I've talked about so far. And this is the video that we showed to the junior class. This is what we show when we go in and talk to teen assemblies. So it is being addressed, you're going to see the narrator addressing you as teens. But what you're going to see is it will reiterate some of the questions that we just talked about. But you're going to see some man-on-the-street interviews and hear from others that we just randomly said, hey, so what do you think is the #1 killer of teens in the United States? So you'll see what some of their random answers are. But as you watch this, just know that there are no actors or actresses. And this was filmed in California, and it's all involving people from our own state of California. So we're going to go ahead and run this video. And let's review what we've talked about so far, and then we'll continue on.
Disasters.
Smoking?
Cigarettes, alcohol,
Forest fires.
disease,
Cancer.
domestic violence.
Falling.
What do I consider lethal? Well, obviously things that kill people.
What do I consider lethal? Leaving your door unlocked and crazy people can get in?
A shot to the head.
Stupid people with guns, AIDS,
Bombs.
murderers.
So what do you consider lethal? For most, it's a matter of perspective. It's either the dangers they sense immediately around them, or it's based on an experience they had. We asked random people what they thought was the #1 killer of teens in America. Here's what they said.
#1 killer of teens in America would be...
I would probably say drugs.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Drugs.
I don't know, drugs. Probably something drug related. Probably have something to do with guns.
I would say acting stupid.
Monster trucks.
Drunk driving, I guess.
Probably drunk driving.
Drunk driving.
Drunk driving. I would have to say cigarettes.
Gang violence.
Violence.
I would have to say negative thinking.
Animals. Smoking crack and getting pregnant.
So some of you are watching this thinking, great, the same old crap we always hear about. Drunk driving, drugs, and the evils of pirating music. But the #1 killer of teens in America is something we've all participated in. Distracted and reckless driving. Seriously, we've all sent a text message while driving, updated our Facebook, made a playlist, dug through a bag, turned to talk to friends, all while supposedly paying attention to the road. So for the next few minutes, we want to show you the lives that have been shattered by distracted and reckless driving, and the simple things that you can do to avoid becoming a statistic.
A teenager is dead after an overnight accident, and police say speed was a factor.
The cops estimated he was going about 100 miles an hour.
She went head on into another car, and that gentleman was killed also.
So basically, they were just being kids, driving a little bit fast is all. Good intentions.
A special vigil tonight to remember a standout athlete.
My daughter has lost one of her very dearest friends, her big brother.
There was an invitation on the roof as to where he had sent.
I visualized that for years afterwards. He clipped the sidewalk or the curb, went upside down.
Experts say car accidents are the #1 killer of teens nationwide.
I don't have my brother anymore. He's not here. He's not around.
And I heard him say time and death. And I just freaked out.
So what exactly is reckless and distracted driving? Let's put it this way. Anytime you have to take your eyes off the road for any reason, that's distracted driving. And reckless driving, that's speeding and driving like a total idiot. Now for the simple part. How do you keep from needlessly dying in a car crash? That's easy. First, you tell your friends that as much as you love them, to sit down and shut up when you're behind the wheel. If they continue to fool around in your car, tell them how great they would look with a feeding tube in their stomach. Second, you realize that you decrease the risk of crashing your sweet car by 2,000% when you don't text and drive. Third, you come to terms with the fact that you might have to wake up 2 minutes earlier just so you're not speeding and running stop signs and putting your life and the lives of others at risk, just so you're not late.
Still not exactly sure what reckless and distracted driving is? Let's hear what our resident expert has to say.
Hi Hi everyone, it's Katie here to talk to you about your driving habit. So, here you are driving along with your peers. You got your window down, tunes blaring, giggling like toddlers in a candy shop. When you, the driver, decides to impress your friends with an outlandish display of horsepower. Really? Breaking the speed limit? Risking your life just for kicks and giggles? Come on, people. That's called reckless driving. How about this little scenario? You are a safe driver who never speeds or breaks the law, but as you are driving, you just have to send that important text message about the guy who likes to girl at school, or does he know, or does she know, or do you know, or whoopsie daisy, you just hit a telephone pole. Hello, folks! You're driving a 6,000-pound metal beast! Don't you think the latest awesome school gossip would wait? That's distracted driving. You drive like that in my hood, my mom will be all up in your girl. That's when you can say, oh no she didn't, girlfriend. I gotta run.
Yeah, I think we all learned something today. Everyone gets distracted while driving. So what distracts you?
If I'm reading directions as I'm driving, I get distracted. Putting on makeup.
Just getting lost in thought and not paying attention to what I'm doing.
Like eating.
Eating, drinking, looking for stuff in my purse.
Oh, the beautiful sunset just staring over there while I'm driving, you know?
Friends in the back seat.
Other people in the car.
Looking for something on the floor.
I definitely talk on the phone while I drive. And I don't want to admit that I get distracted, but I do.
Probably just music. Should like change my music on my iPod or texting.
Texting, emailing.
Texting, iPods, talking.
Texting. Some people suck at texting when they're driving. I, however, am really good at it.
What you often hear from victims is that they never thought it would happen to them. That their son, daughter, friend, or classmate would be involved in a fatal car crash. And absolutely no one can imagine causing such a tragic event.
Let me tell you about Donovan.
He was my teammate. He was my son.
He was a classmate.
He was my best friend.
He was my boyfriend.
My son was my baby boy.
We were just kids, like, having fun.
We were laughing, we were blaring the music up really loud, and I noticed that we were going pretty fast, and it was causing the car to swerve back and forth.
We were, like, making fun of her, telling her, like, can't you keep the car, like, in a straight line?
My response was, oh, like this, and I jerked the wheel back and forth. And the next thing I know, I just see a tree coming at us.
I remember, like, all the sounds of, like, the car crashing.
I looked around and I see Donovan, but he wasn't moving. So I sat with Danica. I kept telling her, Donovan's dead. Donovan's dead. I even remember calling out Donovan's name and, hoping that he would hear me and just get up.
I saw life lay in his own blood, and I knew for sure that he was gone.
When we walked up, that's what we first said, was Donovan didn't make it.
I remember hearing Martha.
Not my son. Not my boy.
And I think that was one of the most painful things to experience, was hearing a mother cry about her son.
The screaming of a mother just now finding out that her son is dead. And all simply because of something that was so preventable.
We were just going home. Speed wasn't really a factor.
Before we knew it, like, in a matter of seconds, we lost our best friend.
It was my fault being the driver because I had that responsibility. I would change it if I could.
We were just having fun.
And within a split second,
I lost somebody that meant the world to me. It changed my life forever.
compelling stories. You've seen the stats. And unless you are sleeping or busy worried about what your teacher is wearing today, you understand the simplicity of the message. What is lethal to teens are bad driving habits, something that can be changed, something that can start saving lives today. So now it's your turn. Fill out the I Commit card, visit the website whatdoyouconsiderlethal.com, and help us promote this important cause by participating in Create Real Impact contest. Most importantly, when you're behind the wheel, focus on the road ahead of you and get where you're going safely. And the reason this is so important to me, my life was shattered by a reckless driver who took the lives of my mom, 2 best friends, and niece while I was pulled from the burning wreckage. I live every day thinking about what could have happened if that driver had chosen to drive differently. Don't let it happen to you.
But it did happen to us. You see, I am Martha. I am Donovan's mom. And I am involved with Impact Teen Drivers because we didn't choose this topic, like I'm encouraging you to talk to your teens about it before it chooses you. Because this topic chose us. And it chose us out of a community that we were the least likely people in that community that anybody thought it might happen to. My husband and I, we were those parents that thought, yeah, we understand the issue, but it would never happen to us because we've done everything society said would protect our children. You see, we knew all their friends. In fact, I was that community mom. All the teens called me mom. They hung out at my home. We had encouraged our kids to be involved with their school, with their social activities. They were headed to college. You know, all the things society says, if you're involved with your teen's life, that they will be safer. We also, when it came time for Donovan to learn to drive and get his driver's license, we had done everything it said, according to the state, to prepare him, plus more. If there was anything on traffic safety, I would sign him up and I would make him attend. You know, after a while, I was like, okay, Mom, I get it, I can drive a car. But, you know, it meant everything for us to make sure that he was as safe as he could be. And he understood why. You see, some of your sons or daughters may have Letterman's jackets. And I carry this because I want communities to know that we may not be from your community, but we're really not that different. And this is my son's Letterman's jacket. He's as real as any teen that might be in your own life or in your community. And on Donovan's Letterman's jacket, you see there's an academic letter as well as an athletic letter because Donovan, he was a stellar scholar as well as an exceptional athlete. And as parents, you know that doesn't come easy. It doesn't come easy for the teen, but it doesn't come easy for the parent either. You see, my husband and I, we had told Donovan and encouraged him to work hard to achieve his dreams once he decided what those were. And we told, encouraged him to do something, to leave your mark on this world. Well, what he chose to do was play football. And so I carry out the football because at his high school, he was the high school football star. He was their star running back. And those TV announcers in the Central Valley of California, in Donovan's junior year of high school, on Friday Night Football highlights, they were announcing his name on what a great job he did on the football field that night representing his high school. But in less than a school year later, those were our TV announcers announcing my son's name because of his death. You see, he was the athlete that they were talking about when they talked about a star athlete losing his life. You see, after Donovan's junior year, because of what a great season it was, Donovan received 25 letters of interest from colleges all across the United States. If you have a teen or you yourself were an athlete, you'll know that letters of interest mean that the college is saying, hey, we're interested in watching you in your senior year. We may want you to play that sport for our college. Donovan got 25 of those letters. Nothing like that had ever happened to our small country high school. Man, our whole community was excited and proud of him. He could not wait to start that senior year. But the thing with the letter of interest is the scouts cannot personally speak to that athlete until 2 weeks before senior year begins. My son Donovan died on a Sunday, 2 weeks before his senior year would begin. And the first day a college scout could have spoken to him was the next day, on Monday. Do you know how heartbreaking that was to know that he'd worked that hard and he missed it by one day of speaking to a single scout, of even getting to relish any of the accomplishment that he had achieved. But then 2 weeks after his death, when that very week I knew that all of his friends were starting their senior year of high school, I knew that all of his football teammates were gathering on the football field. You know what I chose to do as his mom on that week? Because you can only imagine how hard that week was for me. I chose to stay at our home, in his room, on his computer, in an email account that we had set up specifically for college scouts to communicate with him. And I got onto that email account, and you know what? They had contacted my son. I spent that week responding to emails from college scouts, simply saying, thank you for contacting my son, but he is gone. Put your interest in another athlete. I just didn't know if I could even get through saying much more than that. Signed my name, and you know what? To be honest, I deleted it. I didn't even want to know all that he had missed out on. But like I said, you know, we're not from your community, but we're not really that different. See, this is my son, Donovan, an athlete, a young man that had worked hard by making a lifetime of great choices. Somebody who, in our community, in his circle of friends, he was known for being the teen that everybody else would follow his lead decisions, as was Danica. But to show you that we're really not that much different than you see, I want to introduce you to Donovan, because he too started as an elementary student. He became a middle school student. Whatever age your children are, he was that age at some point. But the oldest he got to be was 16. And Donovan and I, we were close. The whole time, he proudly called himself a mama's boy. We're a family of four, and to Donovan, family meant everything. And if you had told Donovan he would hurt his family like this, he would have told you no way. But the pain is the same, whether he did it on purpose or whether it was an accident. His sister Megan, he has an older sister Megan, and to Donovan and Megan, you know, they just couldn't spend enough time together. They even started talking about growing old, getting married, having kids, bringing it back to Grandma and Grandpa's house. You see, they thought they were going to live life together. And what little life that they did live together, they supported each other whenever the other one took on. So as he entered 8th grade, that's when he took up football. Megan and I always take turns wearing the extra jersey, because we want the whole crowd to know he belongs to us and we belong to him. And then by the time he entered high school, we'd gone to every football game up to that point. We continued to go to every football game. And my husband started going to daily football practices just to see his son out there on that field. And then he knew he had college scouts come to watch him play. So after that junior season on the football field, he joined the track team, even though Donovan hated to run long distances. But everything was getting ready for those scouts. And then to relax, he played lead guitar in 3 different bands, 2 of which were at our church. That's still not what he was known for. You see, this is what he was known for. This is with his dad. Whitewater rafting, wakeboarding, snowboarding, and hang gliding. If you told my son there was something fun to do, he was the first one that would say, hey, I'll learn how to do it. Then he learned what to teach all of his friends how to do that fun activity. You see, Donovan loved life. And when we took his sister over to Hawaii to go to college, they wanted to take their first surfing lessons together. Even as a little brother, he thought he'd have to be the one to show her how to do it right. But then he came back, and he wanted to teach all of his friends how to surf. So this was a surfing trip down by Morro Bay near Cayucas. There was a football camp. He had me take a carload of his buddies over early because he wanted to teach them how to surf. But on the way home from that trip, he said, hey, Mom, in a few weeks I'll be turning 17. Will you take another carload of friends over so I can teach them to surf as well? So you see, my son Donovan, he loved life. He loved his life. But he was that kind of friend, and I hope that your children end up with a friend like that if they don't already have one. He was that kind of friend to the people that he hung out with that would tell him, come on guys, getting in trouble's no fun. You know, we don't need drugs or drinking. That just gets us in trouble. Let me show you some fun things to do. Next thing you know, he'd plan a trip, fill my car full, and off we'd go on some excursion he had put together. So you see, in our community, amongst his circle, the kind of boy that made lifetime of great choices, he's not someone who we thought would become a statistic. Because as I said, all those numbers, all those statistics, well, my family, we are those statistics. My son is one of the 5,000 that died in a single year. All of the friends that he had in that car that night, they are amongst those 400,000 that were injured in that year. And you know what? Another alarming statistic is the fact that when we talk to teens, you've seen that one that said 67% of teens say that they chose to remain silent even though they felt unsafe. In my son's car situation, there was 5 teens, and all of them were afraid, and not one person spoke up. So you see, you can become a statistic and not even realize how quickly it can happen. After teaching Donovan to leave his mark on this world, I never thought that he would leave his mark on this world through his death, that his statistic, that his story would be how he would touch the other people that we come across. Consequences? Well, you know what? That night we thought we were making good choices up until the point that the car crash happened. They got ready to leave to go to the movies that night. All Donovan wanted to do was hang out with friends. He invited Danica over. They had known each other since 6th grade. By that point now they're dating. He invited her over. They get ready to leave. And it's only then I realized that they want to ride together. We see he's not 17 yet. He's 3 weeks from turning 17. And so until he turned 17, it wasn't legal for him to have passengers in his car, nor was it legal for him to drive after 11 p.m. For those of you that have teen drivers, you know there are those restrictions. They got ready to leave. I told Donovan, you're not driving. You got 3 weeks before it's legal. Danica speaks up. She says, yeah, but Martha, I'm a little bit older. And, you know, I can take passengers now. I thought, that's a pretty good solution. You see, Danica, I'd known her since she was in 6th grade. Like I said, she called me Mom. You know, and in our community, from the time she got her driver's license, everybody teased her about being the granny driver. Because Danica never went over the speed limit, never broke a traffic law. She never had a parking ticket. So I thought, that's a pretty good solution. So I send Donovan off with Danica and a carload of friends who I knew. The last thing Danica said to me, she came running back, gave me a goodbye hug, and says, I love you, Martha. I said, I love you too, honey. 5 hours later, my husband and I get that dreaded phone call that every one of you parents have always thought would be the worst thing that could happen. And we get that phone call in the middle of the night with, we have a screaming neighbor just simply telling us something bad's happened. You gotta go. And in that video where you see those 2 ambulances, well, that's what my husband and I first seen. 2 ambulances. And then the CHP comes and tells us Donovan didn't make it. And what we find out is on the way home from those movies and that carload of good friends, Danica, that granny driver, she caved into peer pressure. Because the faster Danica would go on that 2-lane country road. Now remember, it is a country road, so there's no cars, there's no people, no street lights, nothing to cause them danger. They created their own situation. Because as she would drive that 2-lane country road, her passengers would tease her, making her think if she would just go a little bit faster, man, it would sure add to the fun. Well, she wanted to add to the fun. Because you see, in this situation, there was no one in that car who had been doing drugs. No one had been drinking. She wasn't even texting. It was nothing but distracted driving. Because they had that music blasting as loud as it could go, singing, laughing, joking along. The 3 boys in the back seat, my son included, well, one of them had a monster drink and a bag of chips, and they all wanted it. So they chose not to put their seatbelts on, because they wanted to get a good wrestle going on to get that drink away from the other. So now, on top of all that chaos, all that fun, they start teasing Danica to go faster. So she thinks, well, I wanted to add to the fun, so she'd go a little faster. Then they tease her again, she'd go faster. It kept snowballing that way. Until finally, did any of you pick up on the last teasing remark that they made to Danica? What was the last thing that they said to her? The last thing they said is, can't you keep the car going straight? And instead of her simply saying, no, I can't, I need to slow it down, which is what Officer Tang and I encourage teens to say now. Instead, she jerked the wheel of the car. Well, you know, the car wasn't going straight because she was losing control. So when she jerked the wheel, she fully lost control, and once she got it to going all the way around, now she really couldn't gain control. And they were going so fast, when they hit the first tree, they bounced off the tree. They bounced off the tree, the back door flew open. And then when the back door flew open, those 3 big old football players, well, they flew out. And my son Donovan died instantly when he hit the pavement. But you see, the car didn't stop turning. The car continued to spin, wrapped itself around the second tree. And it took the jaws of life that night with CHP to pry the car away from that young girl. But Danica did not lose consciousness. So what Danica told me is, well, she sat there, and once she realized that she was trapped, that her very first thought was, no, back up, I don't normally drive like this. I'll do better next time. And then by that time, the dust had settled. And that's when she seen the 3 boys laying motionless in the car, in front of her car with her headlights shining on them. And she realized then that, oh my gosh, she had driven like that. There wasn't going to be a next time. Those were her consequences. And you heard her say she started screaming Donovan's name. Well, the first screaming was just saying, Donovan, wake up. This isn't funny. We don't do this kind of stuff. But by that point, the passenger came and told her Donovan is dead. Because you see, the passenger, can you imagine if your child was a passenger that night? The passenger had to go and check the pulses of the 3 boys. Trust me, their parents had their own journey supporting their child through what they seen that night. But then Danica started screaming, knowing that she had just killed her best friend. And that ambulance that was there when my husband and I came to the scene, well, one of them, as the doors were closing, Danica was inside of it. She told me the last thing she heard as those ambulance doors were closing was our CHP officers telling this mom that my son was dead. And she only heard me screaming, "Not my son, please not my son." Because I would have never thought that Donovan would become a statistic. Consequences? Well, that day the College Scout should have been talking to Donovan, we were at his memorial service. You see, it is a community that's affected when a teen is lost. Over 2,000 people gathered to say goodbye to a 16-year-old boy. He touched hearts, lives, he was gone. Our family doesn't live anywhere near us. We called them, they never got to say goodbye. And we just had to call and tell them, come now. They were coming to go to the water park with Donovan and see him for the first time all summer, because all he was doing was practicing for College Scouts that summer. And on that very day, instead of going to the water park, his cousins carried his casket, down the aisle. His football team was there, his community was there, and those football players, 5 days after being on the field with their friend Donovan, they followed their coach as he carried that football that I carried out that they had signed. And he carried that football, and he led 200 uniformed football players behind Donovan's casket. And those are Donovan's 6 best friends on the varsity team carrying his casket to the hearse. Will you trust me that the parents of those 6 boys had to help them get through the fact of what they had just done in their high school years? And of course, it is a community, and it is a reality, and when it hits hard. My husband and I figured that reality really hit us when we sat in the front pew of the church and seen Donovan's helmet and jacket, closest as it would ever be to his body again, his body being in the casket. And then the night of his funeral, the father and the football team, he's the one that burned Donovan's jersey number on the hillside beside the stadium. And they retired the jersey number, they gave us all the jerseys. My family and I, we went to every game that season still to support that team. There were boys that were struggling because their friend had just died. 3 weeks after his death, when he should have been turning 17, he was already gone. So we went to the beach because that's where he had wanted to go. Wrote a message to him in the sand dune. That's what we do every year on his birth date. Not at all like the celebrations I used to plan for my son. And then 3 days before Donovan's death, Donovan and Danica, they went on a double date with his sister Megan, whom he absolutely adored. That's the last time she's seen her brother, the last picture they ever got to take together. She got married a year after his death and had to put a candle where he was supposed to stand as her best man. And then they kept and asked my husband and I, what are you guys going to do with Donovan now? What a question. So we brought him home. His ashes are in the base of that bird bath. And the reason we chose to bring Donovan home is because he had always said that was his favorite place to be. So we sent our son away to go to the movies. 2 weeks later, we bring him home in ashes to put in our backyard. So now, when there's holidays and big occasions in our family, my husband and I would go sit next to a bird bath, as close as we can, to be by his ashes, because it's the only way we can bring him into our moments now. You see, this topic is worth your attention, because I am asking you, trust me, you do not want to be our family. You don't want to sit next to your son's ashes or your daughter's tombstone. But will you trust me that you don't want to be the parent of the teen who took my son's life? Or the parent of those passengers with the visions that they had? See, there's no good place to be there that night. Danica, she had her own consequences. You see, Danica, she was 17 when this car crash happened. She was 18 by the time the district attorney's office brought charges against her. She had started her senior year of high school, and 3 months into her senior year of high school, the district attorney's office charged her with 4 counts. Felony vehicular manslaughter for Donovan's death. 3 counts of reckless driving causing bodily injury, because everybody got hurt. And so then she spent the next 5 months of her senior year going to court hearings. And in those 5 months, what we found out is each one of those 4 counts, each one carried a minimum of 1 year of imprisonment. So Danica, that granny driver who had never driven like that, she was in her senior year, having just turned 18, looking at a minimum of 4 years of imprisonment. And she was terrified. You see, that wasn't her world. And can you imagine how it felt for her parents to sit behind their daughter at the defendant's table? And for 5 months, we did not know what that judge would choose to do with that young life. Like I said, there's no good place to be in this story. So, when people ask, what's the lesson, Martha? Well, it's kind of hard to narrow it down because there was sure a lot of things done wrong in that one road trip. But the lesson, if I narrow it down, and when I share it with young people, this is what I tell them, is that they have to understand that every time they get in a car, they have to make good choices every time, because they are not guaranteed a second chance to make a good choice. Donovan didn't get a second chance before he lost his life. He was brought up with a car that never moved until everyone had seatbelts on. I'll ask myself the rest of my days on this earth, why that night? Why that night did he choose not to put on the seatbelt? You see, Danica didn't get a second chance either before her life turned into something that she cannot hardly recognize. So this is the ultimate message I would have to narrow it down to. Every road trip is the most important road trip of a person's life. Because if you make bad choices on that one road trip, it could be the last road trip of your entire life. It was for my son. So at this point, I'm going to turn the baton over to Officer Tang because he wants to share with you what are officers or the state of California doing to help you as parents so that you don't become a statistic like we did. Officer Tang?
That is awesome, too. That's a testament to what we're doing here at Viewpoint. It's a great campus, and the students are great here. So what are we doing? What kind of program did we come up with to not have this happen? You heard Martha talk about how her and her family did the right thing. They knew what the limitations were. They knew what Donovan could and could not do. So we came up with a program called the Graduated Driver's License Program. Those of you that aren't familiar with, just by a show of hands, how many of you have teenagers with licenses? Okay. And then how many of you have teenagers that are going to get their permits? Okay. And then the rest, hoping a few years or something like that. Okay. As a father of a 22-year-old daughter, I went through this process as well, and then I have a 15-year-old son. So I'm going to be going through this process at the end of the year. So I can tell you, it is a program that works. And the reason why this program works in conjunction, and as it's different from what we had when we got our licenses, is that it's now a partnership. It's almost like a mentoring program between all of you as the parents and the state of California. And what that is that we want to gradually introduce them to the concept of driving. We want to gradually get them introduced to the concept of driving alone. And we want to teach them good driving habits. That's why some of you that signed those permits, if you looked on the actual form, you actually were signing off on instruction hours that you were responsible for. There was actually 50 hours, 10 of which had to be nighttime, that all of you signed off on saying, yes, I'm going to do that. And that's in addition to the driver's training, the behind the wheel. Okay, the minimum is 6 hours, right? Which is kind of comical. The 6 hours is nothing. Okay, as we all look and shake our heads. So it starts with a learner's permit. Then we go to the provisional license, and the provisional license is just that. It's the provisions. It basically gives the control of the driver's license. Believe it or not, the person who controls that driver's license is all of you. You actually have the power to suspend or revoke their license immediately by just going down to the DMV, filling out a very small 3x5 card. License is immediately suspended. We empowered the parents to do that. How many of you knew that? Did you know that? Good. Some of you knew that. You have that power. And that was part of this provisional program. Okay? And then, of course, the full license. That doesn't come until they're 21. And so that's something of interest as well. Provisional license goes all the way up to they're 21. That's why the license looks different. That's like all the licenses that you and I have that landscape. It's a different appearance. If you look at your son or daughters, it's more of a portrait, up and down. So we did that purposely to signify that they are still in a provisional situation. It's important. It's to remind them they're still on a provisional. Their license can also be suspended a lot sooner than you and I. In order for our license to be suspended or revoked, there has to be hearing. You have to be notified of it. And you have a right to defend yourself in an administrative hearing to maintain your driving privilege. For them, they get a letter in the mail saying, guess what, your driver's license is suspended. It's revoked. There is no hearing. It's just automatically, boom, it's done. That's another big difference as well. The point count system is different as well. For all of us, we, thank goodness, get 4 points. So we get, we have a little bit of leeway. We have a little bit of wiggle room. We make mistakes. It happens. They only get 3. 3 points, and they can lose their license. And what we explain to them is 3 points can happen very quickly. And this is what we explain to them last October, and we explained to you, this is a typical situation in our community here. Typical night, like going to the movies with some friends, okay, had their license for 3 months. So they had their license for 3 months, okay, they tell mom and dad, I'm going to go to a friend's house and hang out. All right, that's typical. And so you think, okay, no problem, just call me when you get there. They call you and they say, hey, I'm here. Then they decide, well, let's go catch a movie at the Commons. So they all pile in the car and go to the Commons. And they catch a 9:30 showing. All right, movie lets out after 11. They think, okay, well, we'll just head home real quick. All right, no one will be the wiser. What they don't realize is there's a stop sign that they don't do a full stop. Okay, and I've asked them, and they say, well, you know, when you ask them, what's a California stop? A lot of your teenagers know what a California stop is. Because why? Because they watch us do it. Okay? All right? And so they do a California stop, and there's a sheriff's deputy blacked out in the corner somewhere. They get pulled over. So now what do we have? We have 3 points. We have driving passengers, violation of the provisional statute. You can't have any passengers for the first year. Point. Driving after 11, point. And then you have the stop sign, 3rd point. 3 points, 1 incident. And see how fast that accumulates. So that's what we're sharing with them, that they don't have that wiggle room. And then we also share with them some violations, such as reckless driving, carry a 2-point. So reckless driving is a 2-point count. We even share with them spinning your tires. How many of you knew that? Spinning your tires actually gives you a 2-point count. Yeah. So we give them that as well. So they get this knowledge, and we share with them, because Martha and I as educators, we strongly believe, and I strongly believe, I'm probably the minority in my department, I strongly believe that the best way for traffic safety is not how many tickets you write, it's not how many citations we issue, but actually education. I think education is, if we could put all of our money in education, I think we would minimize the traffic fatality rate immensely. And that's where we come from. And that's kind of our model. That's why we do this constantly. And another selfless reason, and Martha knows this, is that she hinted that it was a CHP officer that told her, well, one of my other duties, besides working with all the teens, and I have 53 high schools now that I work with in 3 different school districts, one of the other things that I have to do is I am actually the person that makes the death notifications. So I'm actually the one you don't want to see walking up your driveway. I've been doing it since 2001. I do 18 a year, typically. Last year was a very good year. We only did 15. So only 15 people died last year in our area, which is a 480 square mile area. I only handle the freeways and the canyon roads, which would be this immediate area here. I'm very blessed that we've done these education programs and we've seen a huge decline. Huge decline. Okay, so yes, I'm the one that you don't want to see walking up your driveway. That's why I put a lot of effort in these programs, because I think it helps me psychologically, so I can continue doing what I do, but then also it's a little self-serving, because then it's one less parent that I have to talk to. Okay, and so I can tell you, unfortunately, since 2001, I can picture every face of every parent like Martha, and so that's the reason why we changed our delivery system. It used to be back in the day for us, when we took driver's ed and driver's training in high school, remember we used to see that movie Red Asphalt? Blood and gore, body parts on the ground and all that stuff, and we'd ooh and ah and maybe giggle a little bit in driver's ed, okay, when we took that in high school, okay? The problem is that your teens, and as an educator, we're finding that the delivery method and what moves them, and this is a good thing, what moves them is not the blood and gore. It's thinking about all of you. And so when we introduce them and talk about what would it be like, how would it affect your mother or your father, that actually moves them. And it actually causes them great pain. And so that it makes them think now. And so that's the reason why we've changed full circle. You don't see a lot of blood and gore. There wasn't anything like that, because it doesn't affect them. But what affects them when we show these videos, when I have them, Martha speak, we literally have to pass Kleenex boxes down the aisles. That's the way to do it. And that's what's keeping a lasting impression with all of them. And how do I know? Because as an adjunct professor, I run into some of the Viewpoint students. I run into some of the students in my travels at college campuses. And they come up to me and they actually, no fear at all, coming up and saying hello. And saying, do you remember me? And of course I try to be polite and say, yes, I remember you. You know how many students I meet, okay? And they actually tell me what school they came from. And they tell me, I remember that lecture with you and Martha. Okay? That's important because here's the thing. We're not worried about what happens to them right now. I mean, we are, but it's a life skill. This is one of the most important life skills that we can teach our students, our teens, our children, because this is going to be with them for the rest of their life. Okay? So that's something that we really want to emphasize. Now, for those of you that didn't raise your hands and your kids will be getting their permits and will be learning how to drive, we put together a very, very good video, and we'll get it back up on screen. We put a very good video together, the graduated driver's license video. I think it's fantastic. I wish I had it when my daughter was learning how to drive. But this gives you answers a lot of your questions as to the whole program process and what to do. And we'll come back after the video and we'll answer some more questions.
So, kids getting a driver license, huh? Ah, clear the roads! Seriously though, it's scary stuff. Your new driver hurling down the freeway, to say nothing of the insurance hike. Ooh boy. But really, look at the statistics. Drivers between the ages of 15 and 19 are much more likely to experience a collision. You don't want that. I don't want that. Heck, the government doesn't want that. And that's why states nationwide have adopted graduated driver licensing regulations. I know, it sounds complicated, but don't worry, I'm here to help. Welcome to graduated driver licensing made simple. Now, each state has its own set of specific rules and regulations. But today, we're taking a look at California. Meet Daniel and his mom, Kay. They're about to start on the great adventure of the GDL. Daniel turned 15 and a half yesterday. In California, this means he's just old enough to apply for his learner permit. To do this, he needs to complete or be enrolled in driver education and driver training. Fortunately, he finished his driver education class last week and is currently halfway through his driver training course. He and his mom have even spent time together studying this year's California Driver Handbook. All they have to do now is head down to the local DMV, where they'll both sign off on his permit paperwork, and he'll take the written driver exam. 46 harrowing questions later, Daniel has passed his test and is a proud learner permit recipient. Now, the fun part. Daniel needs to clock 50 hours of supervised driving time, 10 of which have to be at night, with his mom, a driving instructor, or another licensed adult over the age of 25. Kay will need to sign off on paperwork stating that Daniel has indeed been practicing his lane changes and three-point turns. Oh yeah, she'll also be keeping track of Daniel, logging his day and night driving hours too. The supervised driving period is really important because it gives experienced drivers a chance to make sure that their protege is learning excellent safety practices behind the wheel. Now that he's got his permit, Daniel needs to spend 6 months working on his driving abilities under his mom's watchful eye before moving on to the next phase. Meet Amanda and her uncle Jason. Amanda is 16 years old and just spent the last 6 months learning Jason's best tips and tricks for how to pull off the perfect parallel parking job, among other vital rules of the road. She's now ready to embark on that rite of passage, the road test. She and Jason head to the DMV, where Amanda will show off her shiny new driving skills. With a passing score here, she'll enter the intermediate stage of the GDL. Now, she can finally strike out on her own in a brand new Mercedes. Yeah, whatever. She may be allowed to drive solo now, but there are still safety restrictions on her intermediate license. Until she's spent a year with an intermediate license, or until she turns 18, she can't drive between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., or drive with other passengers under the age of 20, unless accompanied by a licensed adult over the age of 25. These restrictions are in place to minimize risks and distractions and maximize the experience the new driver gets. Amanda knows it's important to stay alert and aware while she's driving, because the law has specific provisions for intermediate drivers. Repeated accidents or injuries caused by drivers with an intermediate license carry fines and can even result in their license being suspended for an additional 12 months. After 1 year of safe driving with an intermediate license, the state's safety restrictions will be lifted. Congratulations! At this point, Amanda is a fully licensed, unrestricted, ready-to-go driving machine. So, let's recap. In California, at age 15 and a half, you can start working toward your provisional driver license by following these steps. Complete driver education and be enrolled in or complete driver training class before applying for your learner permit. Study the driver handbook with a parent or guardian, then take the written driver exam at the DMV. Pass the test, and you'll receive your learner permit. After getting your learner permit comes 6 months of practice time, where you'll drive with adult supervision for 50 hours, 10 of them at night. At 16, you can head to the DMV for the road test. Once you pass the test, the intermediate license phase begins. You can now drive solo, as long as you follow the intermediate license restrictions. You cannot drive between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., or with anyone under 20 in your car, unless there's a licensed adult over 25 present. After 1 year with an intermediate license, or when you turn 18, the restrictions will be lifted. Hopefully this handy guide has helped you make sense of the ins and outs of graduated driver licensing. For more information and specific rules for your own state, check out impactteendrivers.org. Happy driving!
Now the great thing is we should have enough DVDs for all of you here. So this is on there, because I know some of you are not near that point where you're going to be having that conversation about driver's licenses yet. Now the next video that I want to show, and then we'll hold the questions to the end. We'll have a Q&A session where you can ask questions about this, because there's a lot of exceptions. And there's a lot of misinformation amongst the community about those exceptions, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. This next video I want to share with you, because we do have some middle school parents in here as well, and I want to share this with you. This is an interesting story because this family used to live in Oak Park. So this is another parent, and this is another story, but I want to share this with you because also there's a passenger component. So just watch this video. This is Hunter's video.
My son, Hunter, growing up, he was just very affectionate, very, very kind and gentle soul.
He was an amazing kid. He was well behaved.
Hunter was the kind of kid that a lot of people would want to be like.
We absolutely love spending time with our family.
Our family did everything together. We vacationed together, we ate together, we played together. I mean, my brothers were my best friends growing up.
Always outdoors, always looking for something fun to do.
He brought the adventure out in me.
We call it the Huck Finn life, where he just played on the river, played in the wilderness all summer long.
Go camp up by the falls, go to the lake. Pretty much anything and everything outdoors.
You could find the little things and turn it into some kind of adventurous activity.
He was doing backflips off of stuff before I was willing to jump off of that same rock or boat.
He was always telling me he wanted to be a rally driver in Australia, and he wanted to have his own little restaurant called Hunter's,
He can make you crack up at any time. You never knew what to expect from him, really.
We would lock each other out of the house, and one time I had to get ready for work and I was almost late. So I actually had to pop off my screen to my house and pull him out of the window so that I could get in. But we were doing that stuff all the time.
My fondest memory of Hunter was actually when we were leaving to go to basic training. And he came up to me and he wrapped his little arms around me, he gave the biggest hug. And he said, "I love you."
He invited me on a camping trip. I told him I couldn't make it, but I told him, you know what, I'll see you right when you come back, And I never got to see him.
On August 9th, 2009, Troy and I and Kylie and her husband were away at a family wedding. We were driving home and my cell phone rang and it was our son Jaden. And he said, "Mom, somebody here needs to talk to you."
And it was my captain at work, and he told me that Hunter had been in an accident. And I asked him, where was he? And he said he was at the corners.
I remember Troy telling me that there had been an accident and that Hunter didn't make it. And the first thought that went through my head is, how could this be? This has to be this joke. This couldn't have happened.
I broke down right away.
I didn't want to believe it.
Hunter was a passenger in a car that was driven by a 17-year-old boy who had his provisional license for a very short time. They were on a windy mountain road, and as teenage boys do, they were egging him on to drift around a corner. So he tried to drift around a corner, lost control,
And spun around and hit a tree, unfortunately right on the passenger side, right in Hunter's seat. And he was killed instantly.
and everybody else pretty much walked away.
I found out shortly after that the driver was messing around. It was his fault that my brother's not here anymore. But he's not a bad kid. He just was distracted. He got distracted by the other kids in the car. He wanted to have some fun. He wanted to be the cool older brother. And that unfortunately ended in a tragedy.
Just having your best friend just gone, just taken from you. You'll never get used to that.
One thing we never thought to talk to Hunter about was being a good passenger.
How to act appropriately and not distract the driver.
He was in 8th grade. His friends weren't even driving. There was no reason for me to think that he would be in a car with a provisional license.
He would tell me to go fast or go around, try to drift the car around the corner, and we would lap and we would drive on. Never thought that he would be doing that to a provisional driver, and the provisional driver would actually do it.
That's the hardest for me with my son, Thane. It's really hard to raise him with the memory and the love of Hunter that I have. And it makes me proud that he can point out Uncle Scooby in pictures, and I've made books of him.
I think about it all the time, what it would be if he was still here.
Every day.
We've always been with each other through everything. So to not have Hunter there was very hard for us because everything that we'd been through in life, we were always all there together.
It's definitely that missing link that will never be filled.
There's this big empty space that has a big chunk of my heart that's not there anymore.
Parents need to realize how lives can change if they don't follow the laws of the provisional license. Had that father not made that decision that day, my son would still be here.
And I see such a simple choice that took my brother's life. Makes you realize why those rules are in place.
As parents, sometimes it's tough to tell your kids no. It's a lot easier to have a child mad at you for not allowing them to drive friends than it is to not have them here.
My own provisional driving experience was really based on my parents.
We never allowed our other son to drive friends when he had his provisional license. So, parents really need to step up and teach their children how to be good passengers and talk to them about that.
You cannot ever replace Hunter. You will never be able to.
Nothing ever prepares you for the death of a child.
There's nothing to fix the loss of a child. Nothing at all.
Now, the interesting part of this, too, you heard the father say his captain called him. He was actually a Ventura County Sheriff's deputy, and so they lived in Oak Park. So that's kind of a real close, that kind of really hits close to home. So one of the things that we really want you to have that conversation with is not just the driving part, but obviously the passenger part. So we want to really share that with you. And you heard, and the fact that 8th grade, who has conversations like that in the 8th grade? So we want to make sure that you know to have that conversation, to make sure that you know that this is something that we want to really get out. So we are definitely talking to middle schools. A lot of people are really shocked about that. People are shocked that we're having a conversation like this with middle schoolers. But it's important that we share that with them because are they passengers? Absolutely. And then if you notice, a lot of our statistics start at 15 and 19. 15-year-olds don't have their license, but we're losing them in record numbers. So just keep that in mind. We really want to share that with you and share Hunter's story. Leanne is a great speaker, so we bring her along with us, and she has a very powerful message, and she wants to ensure that everyone doesn't just focus on the driver, okay? That there are other things that we need to have that conversation with as well. Okay, we're going to jump to, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Just to kind of explain a little bit more like how it all worked, the father that night of the driver didn't set out, to break the law. How it all came about was he had just told his youngest son, you can invite some friends over to go on a camping trip. They didn't keep track of how many boys that his youngest son was inviting. So once they were all there, his younger son had invited 2 more friends, and he had seatbelts. And he didn't want to be the dad who said, okay, you 2 boys can't come, because they were already there with their sleeping bags and their fishing poles. So instead of just coming up with a different solution, it was a dad split-second solution that actually cost Hunter his life. Because the dad looked at his 17-year-old son, and who had just got a driver's license, and said, you know what, you know the roads, that's okay, you go ahead and take these extra boys. And then when they got to the point to get gas and the father pulled over, that new driver didn't pull over. He went on around Dad because he did know the roads, and he went on up there. And just like in Donovan's case, the passengers started egging that driver on, but he caved in instead of simply standing up to his own passengers and telling them, I'm not going to drift. And when he did start drifting, he made it the first time, but the second time he didn't. So the father of that driver didn't set out and wasn't a known, person that didn't abide by laws. He was in a situation and didn't want to be the bad guy. And because of that, he made a decision for Hunter's parents that they would have never made on their own. So that's a big part of the story, too. I just wanted to share.
What is drifting?
Drifting is a controlled skid. So it's actually forcing a vehicle into a skid and controlling it around a turn. It's a huge phenomenon. A lot of the teenagers love watching it on the Speed Channel and some other networks, and so it is a phenomenon. We have it here in this area. Stunt Road used to be a very popular road to go drifting on until we put some rumble strips down the middle, so they don't go there anymore. But there are still other parts of this area, the Santa Monica Mountains, where they still drift. All you have to do is just look at the skid marks on the ground. That's drifting. Okay, one other thing too, and the reason why we like to show this video as well, is parents tend to look the other way when it comes to passengers. And some parents like to write notes for their newly licensed drivers to transport siblings and things of that nature. And we'll talk a little bit about this, but this is a very good cautionary video to really, for that first year, they really shouldn't have any passengers. And that's something that this could have been avoided too. If that father had said, you're not legal to have passengers. You shouldn't have any passengers. We could have avoided this tragedy as well. So we'll talk a little bit at the end about that, about your restrictions and stuff like that for those of you that have licensed drivers. We're going to do a really cool exercise here, which is a lot of fun. And the teens seem to like it because it really drives home the numbers. And it's called a probability wheel, and we have some up here, but we'll just play around with a couple here. Well, what I like to always start with is the 0 passengers. So if you see the yellowness, that indicates daytime on the outer ring, and the red indicates nighttime on the outer ring. And then you have various distractions in the inner circles here, or the inner rings here. So if we started with and we'll start with 0. So if we did 0 passengers, 0 distractions, all the way across, you'll see that we have a 0. It should show 0 all the way across. Okay, so now if I just change one thing, which is, let's do adjusting hair and makeup.
Do you want to do day, nighttime, how many passengers?
Let's do daytime, no passengers, just by themselves, adjusting hair and makeup. and you will see there's a 300% probability of them being involved in a collision. Okay? Now, here's an interesting fact. If we were to do, and this is to talk about the no driving between 11 and 5, if we were to go 0 passengers at night with 0 distractions, okay, and we'll reload this. So if you do 0 distractions, 0 passengers, but driving at night, you'll actually see that there's an interesting thing that pops up. There's a small percentage of them that they can get a collision. And we show that to explain to them that just driving at night, there's a high probability, or at least a slight probability, of being involved in the collision. Now, if keeping it on 0 passengers, if we were to just talk about, let's do cell phone. So if we did 0 passengers at night, and then just did cell phone, you'll see what the probability will be.
What do you want to do with your cell phone, Officer Chang?
We'll be talking on the cell phone.
Talking on it?
Yeah. So talking on the cell phone, 406% probability. Okay? So their eyes open up when they see that. And they see that, wow. And these are based on just crash statistics. So we put all of our crash data, statewide, put that in there, and that's how we came up with these probability numbers. So it really drives home as to how just various different actions. And we've even done one which is the most, which is, and she'll put the highest number.
So, and if you put a story behind it, this could be like after a football game or a sporting event or a dance. So it's nighttime, you got 3 passengers in the car, and they're all, they can all even be seatbelted in. You know, I mean, there could be good decisions made. But then, nighttime with 3 passengers, you can't see as well, and it pretty much works out to be every additional passenger is almost a 100% increase or chance of having a car crash, because it's an additional distraction. It's somebody else sitting by that driver vying for their attention, saying, hey, look at me, look at this. You know, talk to me, instead of letting them just focus.
And it could be something as innocent as I just want to go to the beach with my friends.
Right.
Which we hear a lot from your teens. It's just a simple get-together. I'm just going to have a get-together with some friends on the beach. Okay? And with 3 passengers, putting them in the car together, all of that, you'll see the probability of being involved in the collision.
Yeah. So let's say it is, and all of these tie back into those posters we were talking about. So it could be that road trip to the beach. I don't know if they do campfires on the beach or anything around here, but it could be nighttime, 3 passengers are headed to a beach party, maybe even one that you could be supervising. They're just trying to get there. But then they're messing around with the stereo. So it's not a matter that we teach them don't listen to music. It's how long are you going to have your hand off the wheel and your eyes off the road messing to find the perfect radio channel? Or trying to open that CD container and get that CD to fit into the right slot.
So let's do this one, which is 3 passengers operating the radio and then getting text directions. So if we went texting, almost 1,000%. That's just a collision just waiting to happen. Okay, the collision is imminent. And so that's one of the things, I haven't even factored in, this is just saying that they're on a regular street or a freeway. We didn't even factor in, the probability would be even higher if we threw in canyon roads. Canyon, Malibu, Topanga, Encinal, any of those canyon roads, let's throw that in there, probability would be through the roof. Okay, so keep that in mind.
And I'm just going to throw in eating and drinking because that is like my own guilt coming out, because I was the queen of takeout. Because I had my kids' schedules planned so jam-packed. I never figured in food. It was a matter of if we weren't doing some activity, we were off to go have fun. And eating, that was just something I could do, a drive-through, find something. Everybody had, food on their laps and off we'd go, but so would I. So I was that bad role model to my own children because I was the, takeout queen. And they see me do that. And trust me, they did try to do that. And I was in a panic when I seen them trying to eat and drink, So here on the eating and drinking, if you go and explore the school again, we're not even talking alcohol. We're talking like sodas, like takeout food, just eating and drinking. But look what happens. Remember, this is still nighttime with 3 passengers. But eating and drinking, even takeout, you've got your hands off the wheel, and then if you spill something, or I don't know about you guys, but hamburger always spit out of the paper under my lap, so then I would take my eyes off the road, and all the time the car's moving forward. So this is a surprising one. And then I'm going to tie this in as we go back into the cells, like, so on that, let's do reaching for an object. So in Officer Tang's story, it was nighttime, 3 passengers, they're headed to the beach, but, maybe it's they grab that they take out food, or maybe it's their cell phone, and when it goes off, as they reach for it, they knock it off onto the floorboard. Or worse yet, maybe your daughter is putting her purse on the floorboard where the cell phone is. When the cell phone goes off, she's reaching for the floor for that phone out of her purse. It's on the floorboard. So you can only imagine they're not looking at the road.
And we actually had a situation like this. How many of you know Monsignor Sheridan? Okay, he passed away, and it was the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador driving them. And they were heading back from Louisville High School on Mulholland, right? Douglas Kemet, a constitutional professor at Pepperdine University, well known. He was reaching for an air conditioning vent because the Monsignor was a little too hot. And so reaching over, just as simple, the nun in the back seat, and then the Monsignor died a few days later. Okay, so keep in mind this can happen to any of us, the best of us. So just understand that reaching for an object is just very, very deadly. And so keep that in mind. That's a local one. That's just happened a few years ago. Okay.
So what I have here, this is what we are telling your teens. This is what we are telling the young people that we talk to. This is a simple message that you can then share with your young people. So what do we want them to hear from us? We want them to understand that they can make a difference in keeping a road trip safe, whether they're a driver or as a passenger. Speak up, use your voice. We tell them that's the most important and valuable tool that they have. In my son's case, when that video was being filmed, it was 1.5 years after Donovan's death. And there's a point in that video where we are all gathered around the tree, and I'm with those kids, and I hear it myself, where the passengers for the first time tell Danica, the driver, Danica, that night we were so afraid. You were driving so fast. And Danica looked around at them and said, that night? If one of you had spoken up, I would have slowed down, because I was afraid driving that fast. So that meant that from that day forward, those passengers, their guilt and their judgment didn't come from a judge. It came from them finding out themselves that their one voice might have been what could have saved Donovan's life. That's what we want all the teens to know. Donovan had a driver's license, but he was a passenger that night. So that's the message that we want you to share with your teens too. Empower them as a passenger, no matter what age they are. And then, again, making sure that they speak up. We just showed you that probability wheel, letting them know that, hey, things that you might have done as a passenger, you can't do that when you're driving. You have a different set of responsibility when you're behind the wheel of the car. And then also, as I had summarized with our story, they need to always make good choices. They just don't, selectively make good choices on selective road trips, because it'll be that first time when they don't make a good choice that might be the tragic road trip. So this is our website, impactteendrivers.org. And this is where you can go, you can direct your teens here, go with them, watch the videos. Real quick, I'm going to turn it back over to Officer Tang to conclude, but I want to kind of ties in with this, is you can go check it out on the website. Officer Tang mentioned to you, we've got DVDs. Please grab a DVD. It has Donovan's story, Hunter's story. If you have younger teens, because we showed you the classroom video this morning, right, with all the stats and everything. But if you have, like what we show to middle school students, or even like elementary, I'm saying elementary more like the 4th, 5th grade, not, when we go to elementary, please know we don't go talk about dying. We talk about, ooh, that could hurt you. Oh, we don't want to get hurt, But if you watch Donovan's personal video, it's 3 minutes longer, and it's the passengers being interviewed, saying, we did this, we should have done that, we are equally responsible as that driver. So for a middle school student, that's important for them to hear, and that's what we share with middle school students. Come on, you can't be a crazy passenger and expect that driver to focus. It might help you too, because maybe they're the crazy passenger and you're the driver, and you need to get them to calm down. Brochures, we've got these wheels that Officer Tang mentioned, so basically I just want to let you know, come on up here, we have all kinds of materials, and then thanks to the speaker series, that GDL video, not only is it on the DVD, But they have printed out a newsletter that we have that has a summary of all of that was in that GDL video as well. So just want to let you know that all of that's available to you online, even more up here. If you have access to teen audiences, whether it be within the school, within your youth groups, organizations, the green packets have a sample of everything that you've seen us use today. So Officer Tang, that's my conclusion. I'm going to pass it to you now.
Additionally, when you go to the website, I want to share this. Keep in mind, we're educators, and this entire program, Impact Teen Drivers, was actually created by educators. And so what's great about it, when you go to the website, you'll actually see there's various links. So for parents, so that you can, if you click on the parent, it will actually give you all the resources as parents to have the conversation with your son or daughter. You have teachers, first responders, things of that nature. So it's really geared towards the community. You just click on the appropriate box, and then all the resources pop up for you so that you can have that conversation with your son or daughter. Okay?
I'm going to tie back in with Officer Tang because I know he's being gracious and also saying that how the brainchild of this came about from a survey in which they did a survey statewide of CHP officers, and the question was, what's the most stressful part of your job? And their association was wanting to know, hey, how can we help our officers? The majority of officers in our state came back and said the most stressful part of my job is going to a scene where a young person has died needlessly because car crashes are considered preventables. That means they did not have to die. So their association, they came up with brainchild, and then it has gone from there. So this is from people who are living this life.
So now this is your time to ask questions. One of the things that I touched base on was, and I know that I hear a lot from your teens, so this was a good question that was raised by some of the students in October, has to do with my mom writes me a note so that I can transport a younger sibling to school. And I had to say, well, it depends on where you live. Okay, so it's not a clear cut. So if you are going to do that, the law says you have to write a note every day, and you have to be in an area where there is no public transportation. So right here, if you live down the Mulholland corridor, there's no public transportation, so you're good. You live in Topanga Canyon, you're good. Canaan, Malibu Canyon, there's no form of public transportation, so you're good. You can write that note, but you have to write it daily. It has to have a phone number where you can be reached, where it can be confirmed. You can't write a blanket note for the school year. Okay, that doesn't work. Keep in mind, the reason why, going back to Hunter's story, we really want to emphasize they need to drive by themselves. Another thing that your teens shared with us last October was, I have a license, but mom and dad don't let me drive. I'm not saying, this is word for word what they told me. Okay? Here's the problem. We need them to get the experience. They need to drive. But you still have to supervise them. You still have to mentor them. So what is a good suggestion, and what I've shared with other parent groups, is that I've said, set boundaries. So what I did with my 22-year-old daughter when she was learning how to drive, is I set a small boundary. I took a map, and I went 2 miles out. Put a pin where the house is, and I took 2 miles out and just drew a radius. It said, you can go anywhere you want in this radius, and then if you do well, and you don't get any crashes, and you don't get any citations or tickets, then we'll increase it further. Okay? And I let her drive an hour to 2 hours every day in that perimeter. Okay? And then I also, how many of us grew up with the old saying from our parents that when the street lights come on, you better be home, right? Some of you are laughing. Okay, I had that too. That was what I used with my daughter as well. I said, when the street lights come on, the car better be parked in the driveway. Okay? And she did well, so then I increased it out more and more. Okay? And I did that for the first year. She got all the hours, and she drove by herself. Now, I've heard some parents have said, well, I did what you did, Officer Tang, but I added in my own little twist, which is no radio. Okay. I caution the parent, I said, is that really realistic? No, it's not realistic. Okay? They need to drive by themselves with a little bit of realism. I mean, if my parents told me that, you know what I would do? Do the radio one. Okay? And it's not an attainable goal. So I made sure that they understood, and I tell parents, set attainable goals, okay, that are agreeable between you and your teen driver. Okay, so that's something that really works. You know, knock on wood, my daughter's going to be 23 this June, and no crashes, thank God, and no citations. She actually is the granny driver. So her friends don't let her drive because she just drives so slow, okay? Which is kind of sad for her, but good for me as the parent. Another thing that I also recommend is this. Drive with your teens, okay? I don't worry about my daughter's driving because why? I drove with her, okay? I'm comfortable with her driving ability. I'm fine with it. My wife, on the other hand, can't be in the car with her at all. My wife even tried to teach my daughter how to drive, and it didn't go over very well. It was very, very bad. A lot of drama. So, you know, that's fine. I'm an educator, so I know how to communicate. I know that, you know, yelling at the top of your lungs, you're going to crash and you're going to hit this car or whatever, is not a great form or a great way to communicate with a teen. What I did, and everyone in this room is going to do it differently. What I did is I took a notepad and a pencil, okay, and I just jotted down notes. And then I picked a safe spot for her to pulled over, and we had a discussion. It worked out a lot better. She actually liked it that way. Her friends even asked me to teach them how to drive, and I didn't go there. But know that that's a better way than doing it than doing what? Doing the death grip on the grab bar and death grip on the dashboard, and you're like, oh my God, we're going to die, we're going to crash, you're going to get too close to that parked car, and all the things that happen, understandably. It is the most, as head schoolmaster said, is the most terrifying thing as parents we're going to have to do, which is to teach our sons or daughters how to drive, but understand the importance of it because they're going to be using it for the rest of their lives. That it's going to be one skill, life skill, that you teach them that they will be using every day. Yes?
Two questions.
Yes.
One, I really hope that they're going to teach this to sophomores. I mean, my daughter just got her permit, and that's so important.
Okay.
And number two, is there any kind of tracking device? Because Jordan is a bit of a speeder. The driver's ed direct, they give a written thing. And so, is there a way to monitor?
There are ways to do it, and I will give you both the logics, the discussion on both sides. Side one would be, yes, you can be Big Brother and you can low jack their car, and they actually have devices that plug in to the diagnostic port, and it tells you rapid acceleration, deceleration, all that other things, okay, and you can get all that information. And they can't even take it out, because once they take it out of the port, it sends a buzzing sound, okay? And it cannot be taken, you have to plug it back into the laptop and then turn the buzzing sound off, okay? That's great, but the other problem is that, remember what we talked about earlier, which is trust. And you really have to have that level of trust. You know what, they're going to speed, right? But we have to give them the reasons why speeding. They have to understand that there's the consequences. Yes, that is the -- cause of our teen fatalities, is speed, okay? But they have to understand, because they're going to ask why. And they ask me why all the time. And this is what I get when I talk to them, is I get the whys and the what ifs, right? What if this? Why can't I do that? So what I always explain to them is this, and this is a good conversation to have, is that speeding, and you can even tell them this, you can say, you're a great kid, and I'm not doubting your ability, and you may think you're a fantastic driver, but I have 20 years of driving experience, and I don't do that. Your dad has 30 years of driving experience, or whatever it may be, and we don't do that, okay? You don't have that experience. You have a year, 2 years driving experience, so you're lacking the experience. And then also explain, our roads are not designed for that, okay? Our freeways are not designed for those high speeds. Our freeways are actually, if you look at Caltrans, you look at the engineering schematics, the maximum speed on most of our freeways, the actual design build, is actually 85. Many of you know, you've seen the 101 and the 118, no one's doing 85, okay? If they were, we'd be out of business, okay? All right, so, but the way the freeways are designed, that's what the speed is, what they keep in mind. And then also the lane widths, okay? When you go 100 miles an hour, okay, it's difficult to stay in the lane. And so I tell them this, and then you can see the light bulb come on, and they understand. And then I also tell them, What about the person next to you? You sort of look at the granny driver, whose reactions aren't that great, and they lane change in front of you, and you're traveling at that high speed, and you don't know how to react to it. It says, so not only are we not concerned about your ability, but we're concerned about the people around you. And so that also ties in. So we tell them about the whole, look at beyond just what's going on in your car, but look on what's going on around people around you.
But that's the problem, they're all speeding.
I know. I know.
So
I know.
they get self-conscious that they're not people going around her.
Right, and then also, you know what, they even said this last October, hey, we're going with the flow of traffic. I hear that too. And I said, well, you know what, that's great, but also understand they, going back to the experience, the other drivers have more experience than you. So you have to take that experience in heart. And I said, even if you are a professional race car driver, Danica Patrick, or even there's a funny car driver that has 2 daughters that do it as well. I said, they drive, like granny drivers, outside the track, because the track is a controlled setting. The freeway is not a controlled setting. So those are the kind of conversations we have with your teams, with the ones that here in October. And I love the idea, and Mr. Howie and I are old friends, so we will have that discussion. Right now we just do the juniors, okay? Our program is open for all different age groups, okay? So yeah, absolutely, yes.
So the driving is from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. No driving
The first year.
Just the first year.
First year, and then after that first year, there's no restrictions.
But isn't there a curfew?
There is a curfew. That's a very good point. Thank you very much. There is a curfew here in Los Angeles County. The only reason why LA County's curfew has survived the test of time and court challenges is because if you look at our curfew ordinance for LA County, it's a paragraph long. But if you look at the exceptions to the curfew, there's 3 pages of exceptions. It's hilarious. Our curfew ordinance for LA County is like Swiss cheese. It's got so many holes in it. That's the reason why no one challenges it, because it's got a lot of exceptions, a lot of what ifs. If I'll give you an example. Your son or daughter works at the AMC movie theater, gets off at 11 o'clock, and they're on the way home. Well, curfew in LA County is 10. Okay? Yeah, it's 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, LA County curfew is 10 o'clock until they're 18 years of age. In LA County, correct. But there's a lot of exceptions. One would be for employment, one would be for family functions, one would be for religious purposes, school functions. I mean, the list goes on.
So it's not enforced?
It is enforced, but it's mostly used for loitering, like at the Commons, after 10 o'clock, sitting in a car, just milling about, not doing anything. The Sheriff's Department uses it a lot for that. Or Universal City Walk, where we have a lot of under 18 that are congregating and things of that nature. Down at the beaches, we do that as well. So it is enforced for that. But if your son or daughter has a purpose and they're going somewhere or coming from somewhere, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. That's kind of the overall, because I could spend an entire hour just on the exceptions. It's ridiculous. But San Diego County, their curfew ordinance got struck down. It was found unconstitutional. Ventura County, their curfew got cut in half. I mean, it's been decimated. So a lot of Bakersfield, Kern County, their curfew ordinance got struck down as unconstitutional. Ours is stood because it's just so many holes in it. It's not as restrictive as you think, okay, which is good. And that's good that you guys know that. You should know that. You can use that as parents, okay, in your discussions. I won't say arguments, but with your discussions with your teens. It is something that you can share with them that you know, okay? Yes?
We've touched a lot about the first year of driving.
Yes.
I don't know if statistically there's any difference if the child drives, after they've gotten that year, where they're on their own and they're done.
Thank you, yes.
Can we discuss that a little bit?
Yes, there actually is. We were just having this discussion on the way here. There is a Assembly Bill, 724, that is just passed committee yesterday. And 724, and you can go online and Bing it, Google it, AB 724. And what that is it's going to amend the provisional license based on exactly what we just talked about, which is statistics. And what we found is really interesting. is if you're 16 or 17 and you go through the provisional license status and you go through that whole education, it reaffirms our commitment to education. If you do the whole program, your son or daughter actually has a lower chance of being involved in a collision, injury collision, or fatal collision, versus somebody who waits till they're 18 and then gets their license and doesn't have to do driver's ed and driver's training, and then just goes and reads the driver's handbook and then takes the test. And we see the numbers go right through the roof. So really it reaffirms to us that education is the great equalizer, is the great saving grace, because we're finding that our teens that do get their licenses at 16 and 17 survive and avoid collisions better than those who wait till they're 18 and 19. So Assembly Bill 724 actually is moving to change provisional license from 18 years of age to 20. So those of you that said you have middle school students, that will probably affect you. Those of you that have students that have licenses or have their permits will not affect them. Okay? The great thing about this is it will force now everybody under the age of 20 to go through driver's ed and driver's training, which all of us agree is beneficial. As much as we laugh about it, and as much as we joke about sitting and having the gym teacher, the coach, whoever it was that got suckered in by the school principal to teach driver's ed for that semester, it was still beneficial. Okay? We still learned something from it. In the driver's training, I think the biggest thing and the reason why we see these teen fatalities go through the roof was after Governor Duke Majan got rid of driver's ed and driver's training in the high schools, we saw our numbers go through the roof. So it really shows that education and sharing with the students and showing consequences and choices and making good choices is actually very beneficial. And now the numbers show it. So they just came out last month. So it shows that, yes, doing this works.
But are the ones that have already driven a year, now they've gotten the provisional license, do you see the numbers of those drop versus the ones in the first year where they're still, figuring out?
Well, we actually don't see the 17-year-olds and the 17-year-olds who have had their license for a year.
For a year, right.
We don't see them being involved in collisions. That's what's
okay.
That's
So
what's
that's my vote. So if they're driven for a year, then okay.
So our 16 and 17-year-olds, that's a good point. Thank you for clarification. Our 16 and 17-year-olds who are doing this and following the program, it actually is working.
Okay.
It's the 18 and 19-year-olds who aren't doing the program, who aren't following suit. They're the ones that are getting into high collisions. They're killing each other. They're killing other people. And so that's where that's why we're pushing to have this bill, which is great, because if you ask any parent group, they're all going to shake their heads in agreement, yes, we need to change it from 18 to 20. It makes sense. It's common sense. Yes?
I just want to say that insurance companies also help with support of that, in that you get a greatly reduced rate of insurance for your kid if they go through Teen Smart, which is a program similar to what you guys are all talking about.
Exactly.
With the parents have to do it with them.
Exactly. There's Start Smart is one of the programs where parents have to attend in class. I don't get a lot of people here for that because we have a great program here. Locally, for all of you, it's called STOP. And it's called Sheriff's Teen Traffic Offender Program. And it's very unique just to your community. Yeah, so STOP. And actually, if you go to their website, stop.net, see, I don't even work for the Sheriff's Department. But I promote their program because it's a good, solid, educationally based program that all of the cities, Agoura, Calabasas, Westlake, and Malibu, all created for the communities. Because parents like you were saying, we need something to educate our teens. It does two things. You're going to love this one. Kind of going back to the beginning, what the head schoolmaster said was, it's a source where all of you as a community can report teen drivers that are driving reckless. So there's a way to do that. And the second part is it's a diversion program where we can actually educate them. So they don't have to go into the court system. We don't have to get the legal part of it involved. So the sheriff's deputy will actually pay a home visit, sit down with mom and dad and the young driver and say, listen, okay, we have 3 complaints about you ripping up and down the street, driving real fast, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this is the reason why this is a bad thing. And we go that way. See how that works? A lot better than writing them a ticket. They're not going to learn if they get a ticket. Okay? When have you heard a cop ever say that?
That
All right?
also shows a lot of the gore and stuff that you guys talked about earlier, that particular program.
Right. And we're getting away from that, though, by the way. We're really going away from that. Our studies and our data has shown that teens don't respond to the blood and gore. It's something about, if I bring a crashed car to a location, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't stay with them. It stays with you and I. You and I get very moved, and we're very affected by it. We actually remember those images. But for your teenager, if you ask them, they're going to remember Martha. If any of you had the teens that were in the October, if you just said Martha Tessmer, they're going to know exactly who she is. Which is a lot better than them remembering what the make model of the crash car was. Okay? So I know that for a fact that we know that this is actually hitting home. Yes?
I want to say thank you
Oh, you're welcome.
to you and everybody, the VSSA. This was really powerful.
Okay.
I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. I really came because I needed to be scared straight. So for me, you know, my kids are saying, Mom, don't text and drive. I'll do it for you. So it is working. I think my biggest takeaway is it was all so powerful, so lots to take away, but I didn't realize, you know, I have my coffee in the morning, and even just changing the station on satellite radio, doing the directions, you know, because you have the visual direction on the app on the phone. There's just so many distractions. I feel like I need to turn the phone off and put it in the trunk. I mean, for me. But then there's the car itself, just all the choices. So it's overwhelming. I'm feeling really overwhelmed, but I feel really empowered, and this was really incredible. So thank you.
Well,
so
you know,
much.
I will tell you, Mr. Howie and I go back to Westmark, which is one of his previous campuses, and we've been together for a long time, and you really should thank the people here, you know, Elon Strasser, Mr. Howie, for bringing us here, because prior to that, we didn't have any programs here. We had no type of outreach programs here that were addressed. And I will tell you, he made me jump through a lot of hoops. I mean, he criticized and looked at, because he's very protective of his kids here. And I say his kids. So he made sure that I had to submit a curriculum. I thought I was going through a department review. So we had to submit a curriculum, because he wanted to make sure that the material that was presented to your students, to your children, was suitable, that was within the Viewpoint guidelines, and that was going to be impactful, and it wasn't going to be a waste of time. So know that. So, you know, we've been very successfully educating, you know, many classes here, so it's been very good. Thank you. Yes.
Now, thank Officer Tang for being here. Martha, you are a rock. I don't know how you do this, but we are so thankful that you do it. This isn't the first time I've seen Martha speak and listen to Officer Tang with all that he has to say in it, and it's as powerful every time, so please keep doing it. This is important. And the challenge with this is today, I mean, obviously, as the head of the upper school, this is terrifying. It really is. Every day I drive down Mulholland Highway, and you think about the margin of error in passing cars that could lead to a fatal collision, and think, how many times have we been distracted to the point where we've veered a foot to the left? It's almost surprising it doesn't happen more. But I think the challenge is we leave here, and this is so meaningful to us, and for this week, we will be the best drivers we can. Right? And then next week, we start to, and I think the challenge for us is then, and the real challenge is, I suspect that those of you sitting in this room are probably the ones who need this least. There are people out there who are not here, who didn't come today for whatever reason, that need to hear this message. We need to be the vessel for Martha and Officer Tang's message. We need to get that out there. We need to be the aunt, the uncle, the friend, the parent that chips away in the child's ear and says something. Don't ever let your child leave home and think, should I have said it? Yes, you should have said it. Of course you should have said it. I travel every day in my car. I have the school directory. And if I see one of our children driving in a way that I think is in any way dangerous, I'll call you straight away. I'll call you on a Saturday night. It might not be a popular call, and I'd rather spend time doing other things, but we'll call you. Is it within our jurisdiction? Is it part of what the school should do? Probably not, but I think we care about our kids, and I can't stand to think that I saw something that I could stop and I did nothing. So please, join us all in doing that. Do something, say something. If you see a child on the freeway or outside here and you get a license plate, call me with the license plate. We probably have record of whose car it is, and I'll talk to the child and talk to the parent. It's not an easy call to make, but I know that you would rather have that call. I know that I would rather have that call and have the opportunity to talk to my child, so please do it. It might not be a student at Viewpoint, but we've done what we can to try and educate. And the STOP program is STTOP. Use it. Please call them. You can even do it online, right?
Yes, online. So if you go to sttop.net, it's
Okay.
not .com, it's a .net. Yeah, thank you for reminding me that.
You can never do too little.
Right.
There's nothing you can do. And the point being, what I always take from this is we always think of people who get in these types of accidents as the bad kids, the ones who are distracted. It's not. It's everyone. It's anyone. It's the one child in their car who reached down to get something that rear-ended someone. I've been there actually with a Viewpoint student. It doesn't take much. Again, that margin of error.
And then for the parents in the room, just so you know, this same message is being carried through all the schools on the Mulholland Corridor. So Louisville, okay, Calabasas. So everybody along the, I call it the Mulholland Corridor, gets it, as well as, so that means that not only is your children getting the same message, but when they go into house parties or they go hang out with friends, their friends are getting it as well. Oaks Christian, all of the schools, I make sure that I give them the same message because they all hang out together. Okay, Viewpoint students don't just hang out with Viewpoint students. They hang out with everybody. Chaminade, you know, Mr. Howie knows I talk with Brother Tom a lot, and we do a great program with them, and also their parents. So the Chaminade parents are very involved in this as well. So just know that. I'm going to go here, and then we'll go to you with this.